They called it a Shadow Council. Others whispered darker names: the Morning Synod, the Silent Brethren, the Last Light. But in the official tomes sealed beneath Ordo Xenos archives, it is known simply as the Orphite Conclave. It took place in the waning years of the 32nd millennium, when the scars of old night had begun to throb anew, and the Imperium teetered on the edge of fragmentation. There, beneath the dying sun of Orphite IV, 12 inquisitors gathered. Not by chance, not by invitation, but by prophecy. Each one a master of their arts, each one bearing secrets so vile that entire planets had been purged to keep them hidden. And all of them shared one truth: the galaxy was dying, not from heresy, not from demonic incursion, but from something older, something stranger, something alien. Inquisitor Adept Caius Varnor, chronicler of the Conclave, described the first gathering in a blood-inked transcript retrieved from a dead astropath's skull. The void beyond speaks, not in words, but in hunger. The beasts are waking. We are not prepared. The Orphite Conclave was born from this fear. At its head stood Inquisitor Morbe Xanthi of the Amalathian school, his face long since replaced by augmetics after a myrmikid bioswarm devoured half his skull. To his left, Inquisitor Kylar Tan of the Isfarnian Schism, draped in flayed xenos skin, claimed to have walked among the Yuvath ruins and returned sane. And behind them, veiled and voiceless, Inquisitor Halix the Black, whose mere presence silenced servo skulls and caused cogitators to weep data tears of static. This was no ordinary synod. They convened in the fractured remains of the Vigilatus Bastion, a fortress once dedicated to Astra Militarum deployment across Segmentum Tempestus. Now it was a ghost shell, its command spires hollowed by forgotten Xenos weapons, its walls marked with claw gouges that pulsed faintly under starlight. They chose it not for its strategic value, but because it had been erased from every Imperial record. A place forgotten by man, but remembered by the alien. For 3 standard weeks, the Conclave spoke of death. They spoke of the greenskin proliferation on the fringe worlds, of silent Necron tombs stuttering into life. They spoke of crystalline specters devouring colonies in silence, of void echoes that sang in the tongues of extinct species. And finally, they spoke of the Tyranids, though no name had yet been given to that devouring race. Only fragments, a shadow across the void, genomic anomalies found in long-dead systems, fangs without predators. The Conclave knew one thing with certainty: the galaxy would not fall in fire. It would fall in silence, one planet at a time, eaten, assimilated, forgotten. It was Inquisitor Satrel of the Ordo Xenos Extremis who first uttered the unthinkable. Astartes, not to fight wars, but to hunt, not in legions, in silence. What we need is not another crusade, he said, but a scalpel, a fang in the dark. The others objected, of course. To tamper with the Adeptus Astartes was to tamper with the Emperor's own flesh. But Satrael did not suggest remaking them. He suggested calling upon them, taking the best of the chapters, those proven in the crucible of alien war, and forging a new bond. A pact, not permanent, not binding, but eternal in purpose. The Deathwatch was not yet named, but its bones were laid bare in that moment. Inquisitor Xanthi called it the Long Vigil, a vigil not for glory, not for conquest, but for survival. One by one, the Conclave came to agree, not out of hope, but out of necessity. The Inquisition had always used the Astartes, whether they admitted it or not. Now they would sanctify that use, formalize it, weaponize it. They would create a chamber militant, but not a chapter, a shadow of one. Each member would be drawn from the ranks of existing chapters, volunteers sworn to serve for a time in black. bound by oaths sealed in the blood of their homeworlds. They would leave behind their colors, their customs, even their names. They would become watchers, hunters, assassins in service to the throne, and they would answer only to the Ordo Xenos. That was the compromise. The chapters would not lose their sons. They would loan them. A warrior might serve 1 year, or 10, or until death. When his task was done, he would return to his brothers, changed, sharpened, touched by shadows. The records indicate that by the final night of the conclave, the first draft of the Oath of Service had been penned. 431 words etched into the stasis-frozen hide of a Zothic stalker beast slain during the Dark Meridian campaign. The first watch sergeant to read them aloud would later die with those same words burned into his ribcage by xenophage plasma. But the words survived. By the Emperor's light and the shadows in which he does not walk, I stand the long vigil. I am the blade in black. I am the watcher at the threshold. I am the silence before the scream. The Orphite conclave ended as it began, without witnesses. The Inquisitors scattered. Some returned to their districts. Others vanished, never to be recorded again. Their names do not appear on Imperial rolls. Their deeds are marked in sealed data vaults that no tech priest may access without 12 inquisitorial seals. But the result of their actions, it echoes still. Within a century, the first fortress was founded on the storm-racked moon of Watch Station Andronicus. Within 2, kill teams were already operating in Segmentum Pacificus, eradicating Genestealer infestations long before the Imperium even recognized the threat they posed. And within 5 centuries, the name Deathwatch would be spoken in hushed reverence by Astartes and Inquisitors alike, not as a chapter, but as a sentence. For those who are called, there is no greater honor, nor any darker burden. The Deathwatch was not born in fire. It was whispered into existence in a dying place by men who had stared into the abyss and seen what would crawl out of it. And from that silence they forged a brotherhood that would never rest, a vigil that would never end. They came like a storm of green flame, tearing reality open with guttural war cries and engines of rusted brutality. The Orcs had always been a plague upon the Imperium, festering in the cracks of forgotten systems and prowling the void in crude, haphazard vessels. But this was different. It began in 32M, in a time already marred by the raw wounds left behind from the Horus heresy. The scars of treachery were still fresh across the stars, and the Imperium was weary, stretched thin and arrogant in its assumption of recovery. And then, without warning, came the Beast. No one remembers its true name, if it even had one. What is remembered is its scale, its cunning, its horror. The Beast was not a simple war boss. It was something more, an orc of such size, intelligence, and power that it rose above the brutish idiocy of its kin and built an empire of conquest that dwarfed even the mightiest threats faced during the heresy. Entire sectors vanished. Hive worlds were ground into silence beneath moon-sized void hulks, and Imperial Navy battle fleets were shattered like chaff in a solar gale. The Orcs had achieved something that defied every expectation: organization. Not just in war bands, but in legions. They had learned, they had adapted. The High Lords of Terra, still young in their authority, still groping for control in the vacuum left by the Emperor's internment, reacted with the desperation of cornered prey. They called for crusades. They called for extermination fleets. They called, as they always did, for sacrifice. It was not enough. On Ulanor, the ancient site of the Emperor's triumph over the Orc menace during the Great Crusade, the Beast made its throne. There, upon that blood-stained world, it defied the Imperium. It desecrated the memory of the Primarchs, and there, the Imperium bled. The Astartes chapters responded, of course, Honor demanded it. Valor demanded it. The orcs had to be stopped. Among them stood the Sons of Dawn, the Imperial Fists, ever faithful, ever unyielding. Led by their chapter master Courland, the last son of Dawn himself, they launched an assault on Ulanor that would enter legend and tragedy. The first invasion failed, not in a slow retreat, but in fire and screams. Thousands of space marines died in the dust of Ulanor. Courland himself was the sole survivor, plucked from the brink of death by fate, or perhaps something crueler. But in his failure, he saw clarity. Courland understood something the High Lords and his fellow chapter masters had not. This was not a war that could be won by sheer might, not against an enemy this vast, this mobile, this coordinated. Traditional deployments meant nothing. Battles were lost before they began. Worlds died before the fleet even arrived. The solution had to be something different, unorthodox, dangerous. Courland returned to Terra, not as a defeated soldier, but as a prophet of necessary change. He spoke not in terms of glory, but of extinction. The Imperium could not endure if it kept fighting like it always had. He demanded the creation of kill teams, elite bands of Astartes drawn from different chapters, trained and armed to operate in ways that conventional forces could not. Strikes behind enemy lines, sabotage, surgical assassinations, deep infiltration, every rule broken, every tactic examined not by tradition, but by efficacy. He brought this proposal before the High Lords. He spoke with fury and desperation, and for the first time since the Siege of Terra, the chambers of power fell silent. To back his vision, Courland reached beyond the walls of the Imperial Palace and formed a quiet alliance with agents of the Ordo Xenos, among them Inquisitor Venand, a woman of sharp mind and ruthless ambition. Together, they drafted what would become the foundation of a new doctrine, one that blurred the lines between the sacred and the forbidden. It was Venand who first used the term Deathwatch, a force not bound by any one chapter, but drawn from them all. Volunteers, or those offered as tithe. Each warrior swearing an oath to serve, not for a campaign, but for a vigil. A sacred duty unlike any other. A soldier who returned from the Deathwatch would never be the same, if they returned at all. The High Lords consented begrudgingly. Many balked at the idea. This went against centuries of doctrine, of codex purity. But desperation has always been the true architect of revolution. Courland, now assuming the mantle of Lord Commander of the Imperium, a title not worn since the days of Robout Guilliman, used his newfound authority to see the Deathwatch born in truth. From the ashes of failure, he birthed the Blade in Shadow. As the second invasion of Ulanor was prepared, the first Deathwatch kill teams were assembled. They were hand-picked, drawn from chapters that had survived the beast's onslaught. Ultramarines, Salamanders, Iron Hands, Raven Guard, Space Wolves, and from among them one warrior rose to stand as the first Watch Commander, Asker Warfist of the Vulca Fenrica. A brute in war, but a cunning killer in the darkness, Warfist embodied the savage brilliance required of this new brotherhood. He was no lord of ceremony, no relic of static honor. He was a killer, and killers were what the Imperium needed. The Deathwatch was untested. Their war gear was specialized but improvised. They lacked doctrine. They lacked structure. But they did not lack purpose. They were deployed ahead of the main force, small cells of 5 to 10 warriors each. Their task was simple: cripple the Orc war machine, destroy relays, assassinate mech boys, collapse supply tunnels, poison spore vats. No targets were too dangerous, no losses unacceptable, and it worked. By the time Courland led the second assault on Ulanor, the Orcs were weakened, fragmented, unbalanced. The beast still lived, but the roots of his empire had been set ablaze. The Deathwatch proved itself not in triumph, but in cost. Hundreds died. Dozens of kill teams never reported back, but their sacrifice made victory possible. Corlin did not live to see the end of the war. He fell confronting the beast with his own blade, but the machine he had set in motion continued to turn. With the orcs fractured, the Imperium pressed the advantage. The way collapsed. The beast, whatever it truly was finally slain. The surviving Deathwatch returned not to parade, but to silence. They did not claim honors. They did not claim banners. They simply disappeared, returning to the stars, waiting for the next threat, the next storm. In the wake of war, the Deathwatch was formalized, given sanction by the Ordo Xenos. Watch fortresses were constructed in secret places, protocols written, oaths sealed. The Deathwatch was no longer an experiment, it was a necessity. Born from the edge of extinction, it became the blade that would strike where no other could. Not a chapter, not a crusade, a warning. And every time a black armored figure steps from the shadows, every xeno species in the galaxy is reminded, the Imperium may bleed, but it never forgets. There were no banners, no grand parades, no lines of triumphal warriors returning in glory. The first kill teams of the Deathwatch were not hailed as heroes. They were not meant to be seen. They were meant to vanish into the void, strike like razors through the skin of the alien, and disappear again like smoke. They were ghosts in black, after the fires of Ulanor had cooled, and the corpse of the beast lay broken across the plains where the Emperor had once stood victorious. The Imperium took stock. The devastation was immeasurable. Hundreds of worlds lost, thousands of Astartes slain, fleets shattered beyond hope of reconstruction. Yet, within that ruin, something new had taken root, something leaner, deadlier. The first true Deathwatch kill teams were drawn not from doctrine or decree, but necessity. They were survivors, outliers, specialists, veterans of shattered companies, warriors marked not by glory, but by scars. Some had lost their entire chapter. Others had been seconded to the Inquisition during the war and never returned. These were not fresh recruits or shining champions. They were killers who had survived the worst war the Imperium had known since the Horus Heresy. They were angry, they were precise, and they were perfect. The earliest recruitment methods were ad hoc at best. The Ordo Xenos would send requests, summons cloaked in ancient oaths and veiled honors, to chapters across the segmentums. Aboard Watch Fortress Ariok, then only a shadow of its later grandeur, the first kill teams were assembled. They came one by one, a lone Raven Guard clad in jet armor, his helmet lenses stained with the smoke of unspoken wars. A salamander whose flesh bore ritual scars, each a mark of a xenos he had burned. An Iron Hands tech marine whose servo arms twitched with the memory of disassembling orc war engines mid-battle. A White Scars assault brother who had ridden a gutted tyrannid bioform down into a chasm and survived. No names, no ranks, only purpose. The first watch captain was selected not by command, but consensus. They chose him because none could deny his skill. Brother Captain Kyrion of the Black Templars, known as the Flame Reaper, who had destroyed a Torellian war clan using only a broken power sword and the promise of vengeance. He spoke little. He prayed often. He led always. Under Kyrion's command, the first true Deathwatch operation was launched, not against the orcs, but something far older, the Eldar. Specifically a rogue Drukhari cabal operating from the webway tears in the Adrantis Nebula. They had been abducting entire populations from agri-worlds, leaving behind only blood and laughter. The Imperium had sent regiments. They had vanished. The Deathwatch was sent instead. Kill Team Umbra dropped silently into the ruins of Androvia Prime, using grav chutes and cloaking fields supplied by tech priests who didn't want to know where the tech had come from. They moved like wraiths. No vox, no light, no sound. Every member carried specialized gear. Stasis grenades for sudden crowd control, xenotech disruptors for warp portal destabilization, and one relic blade once wielded by a custodian lost during the heresy. They found the Drukhari mid-harvest, 1,000 alien warriors, raiders clad in barbed armor and laughing behind masks of agony, torturing the last survivors of the world for their twisted joy. Kill Team Umbra did not charge. They did not announce their arrival. They began killing, systematically, efficiently, beautifully. Bolt rounds tailored to punch through xenos phase armor. Meltagans tuned to incinerate flesh without harming vital structures. Sniper fire that ruptured hearts mid-beat. The Drukhari died in confusion, in silence. The Deathwatch did not fight them. They hunted them. By the time the sun rose, if that pale corpse of a star could even be called such, only ash remained. The kill team exfiltrated through an ancient monolith structure that the Mechanicus would later claim as Necron in origin. They left no message, no signal. The Inquisition knew, and that was enough. The success of Umbra set a precedent. Soon, more kill teams followed. Kill Team Ferrum was sent into the radiation-choked hives of Delsis Minor to eradicate a nascent Hrud infestation. Kill Team Phalanx engaged and neutralized a rogue demiurge prospecting vessel that had begun enslaving colonists, and Kill Team Vox Null undertook an infiltration of a Tau listening post in the Damocles region, stealing vital intel before detonating the outpost's gravity core, causing the orbital station to implode silently into itself. Each mission was different, each target tailored, each kill team equipped not with general-purpose weapons, but gear hand-forged for their foe. Hellfire rounds for the chitinous beasts of the Tyranid strains, disruption fields for Necron phase shields, electrostatic discharge units for energy-dwelling xenos parasites whose names were never spoken aloud. But even as their missions grew in number, the kill teams remained small. 5 to 10 warriors, no more. Each one was a master of his chosen discipline, a master of stealth, a master of demolition, a master of close-quarters extermination. They were never assigned randomly. Each kill team was crafted like a relic blade, balanced, precise, and intended for a single strike that would never need to be repeated. Their tactics became the stuff of whispered awe even within the Astartes chapters. Veterans returned with alien trophies none could recognize. A howling griffin bore a scar from a battle with crystalline constructs that bled light. A dark angel brought back a weapon that sang when fired, a relic the librarius refused to even examine. The Deathwatch was no longer a theory. It was a force, a doctrine, a myth. Watch stations were established in growing number, hidden among asteroid fields, cloaked behind artificial moons, buried in the crusts of dead worlds. Each one a self-sufficient stronghold, manned by kill teams between deployments. Here they trained, here they adapted, here they studied. The Codex Astartes had little to say about such structures, but Guilliman was not here to object. These stations became crucibles of knowledge, every xenos threat catalogued, every slain foe dissected, every trophy archived, and from these dark vaults came new weapons, hellfire bolts, disintegration munitions, arc-pattern void blades. The Deathwatch did not just fight xenos, they evolved with them. This was their true strength. Where most chapters relied on tradition, the Deathwatch embraced change. Where others feared the unknown, they dissected it. And within the cloistered echo of watch fortresses across the galaxy, the first of the kill teams passed into legend. They did not return for glory. They did not ask for thanks. they returned for the next hunt, the next war, because the long vigil had begun, and the stars were vast with enemies. There are places in the Imperium where history is etched into the very stones, worlds whose names echo with triumph, tragedy, and ancient oaths. But there are also places that exist between pages, sites unrecorded, uncelebrated, veiled by the Inquisition's long shadow. Thalassa Prime is one such world. Located in the distant reaches of Segmentum Ultima, Thalassa Prime is not a world easily found on a star chart. Most astrogation archives list it as a barren rock orbiting a failed red dwarf. To the uninitiated, it is useless, dead, forgotten, and irrelevant. But to those who serve in the black, it is something else entirely. Thalassa Prime is the beating heart of the Deathwatch, not its only fortress, not its only bastion, but its soul. It was never meant to be so. Before the rise of the Deathwatch, Thalassa Prime had been a failed colonization effort. Its atmosphere was unstable, its gravity inconsistent, and its subcrustal tectonics made long-term habitation near impossible. The Mechanicus abandoned it after 4 decades, leaving behind a lattice of partially constructed void silos, subterranean reactors, and miles of abandoned tunnels. But the Ordo Xenos saw something different. They saw isolation, silence, opportunity. In the years following the Ulanor campaigns and the first victories of the Deathwatch kill teams, the Ordo began the construction of a true fortress. Not a forward operating base, not a garrison, but a sanctuary, a crucible, and a watchtower all in one. A place to gather intelligence, to train elite warriors, and to house the darkest truths of the galaxy. They named it Watch Fortress Thalassa. Construction began beneath the surface, hidden chambers carved into obsidian crust, reinforced with adamantium brought in secret from forge worlds loyal to the Inquisition. Thousands of servitors, mind-wiped laborers, and machine priests worked in shifts that never ceased. No record of this labor exists outside of encrypted Ordo vaults. No ships were seen arriving. No Imperial tithes were disturbed. Above the world, defense platforms were hidden behind asteroid shells, powered by reactor cores scavenged from decommissioned battleships. Orbital entry was only granted to ships bearing the transcoded sigils of the Ordo Xenos, updated every Terran month. All others were destroyed without warning. By the time the fortress was fully operational, Thalassa Prime had become one of the most secure installations in the galaxy. Its architecture defies simple classification. From orbit, one sees nothing but a cratered red wasteland. But deep below, the fortress sprawls like a neural network. Vaults, armories, gene vaults, xenobiology labs, kill team sanctuaries, apothecarian halls, and chapels black as voidstone, all connected by a web of mag rail tunnels and descending shafts. No banners hang in its halls, no statues stand in memorial. The walls are etched only with the names of kill teams, names followed by symbols, some for success, others for silence. Every Astartes who enters Thalassa Prime undergoes the same rite. He descends alone into the Hall of Refraction, a chamber lined with obsidian mirrors, each one reflecting not just the body, but the sins, failures, and doubts of the soul. There he removes the colors of his chapter. He lays down his heraldry, his honor markings, his victories, and he dons the black. Not the black of mourning, the black of resolve. The left pauldron, polished silver, remains untouched, its surface engraved with the badge of the Astartes home chapter. A reminder of origin, of duty, of what must be returned to should he survive the vigil. From that moment on, the Astartes is Deathwatch. He is no longer a son of Macrage, Fenris, Nocturne, or Bale. He is a sentinel of humanity's last threshold. Within the fortress, he trains not with his kin, but with strangers. Raven Guard beside White Scar, Imperial fist beside flesh, terror. Night and fire, siege and fury, made to fight as one. The training halls of Thalassa Prime are unlike those of any chapter monastery. There are no chants, no rituals, only function, only war. Simulated void combat in low-gravity modules, xenos anatomy dissections in sterile stasis labs, urban extermination drills against Necron constructs, close-quarter drills against Wraithbone mock-ups, boarding tactics honed in derelict Mechanicus Hulk segments to mimic Tau stations, and the silence chambers. No one speaks of the silence chambers. There, in darkness and null void, kill teams are dropped into mind simulation nexuses, crafted by inquisitorial psychers using the memories of fallen Deathwatch Marines. They relive the final moments of failed missions. They feel the claws, the toxin, the mind venom of the Hrood, the slicing malice of Dark Eldar blades, the sudden nothingness of Necron phase weapons. Failure is not tolerated, not because it offends honor, but because it costs lives, worlds. Victory in these halls earns no praise, only a nod, a new assignment. And yet, Thalassa Prime is not just a place of training. It is a repository. Deep within its vaults lie artifacts deemed too dangerous to destroy and too valuable to discard. There are Tyranid synapse nodes preserved in stasis, still twitching. There are fragments of tesseract labyrinths locked behind energy barriers, blessed by the ecclesiarchy and reinforced by the Adeptus Mechanicus. A complete Dark Eldar pain engine, neutralized and bound in a psychotropic cage, its mind eternally howling into empty halls. And data, every xenos contact, every kill team report, every anomalous reading, intercepted voxcast or rogue astropathic scream. It all comes to Thalassa Prime, processed, cross-referenced, analyzed, stored. Inquisitors walk these halls, but they do not rule them. Thalassa Prime answers only to the Vigil. Watch Masters, veterans among veterans, command the fortress. Their word is law. Their silence is absolute. A Watchmaster may speak to an Inquisitor with deference, but he obeys only the Vigil. It is here that kill teams are assigned. A data shard appears in their barracks. Coordinates, objective, threat classification, estimated life expectancy, no commentary, no ceremony. Within hours, they are gone. The fortress reverts to silence. Some return, others do not. The walls do not mourn. The fortress does not stop. Because Thalassa Prime is not a temple, it is not a monument, it is a blade waiting to be unsheathed. And in the darkness of the galaxy where alien horrors scheme and fester, that blade must always be ready. For the long vigil waits for no man. No one truly understands what it means to take the long vigil until they've stood at the edge of a dying star, waiting for a xenos warform to surface from a liquefied moon. Or until they've fought for 5 days without rest inside the ribcage of a fallen void creature surrounded by spores that whisper the names of your dead. To most of the Imperium, the Deathwatch is a myth, a whisper among voidfarers, a name spoken with fear and reverence among alien races. But to those who don the black, it is an oath. And that oath has no end. The long vigil is not a campaign. It is not a crusade. It is a sentence. It begins with a summons. Sometimes it comes as a formal request from the Ordo Xenos. Sometimes it arrives with no explanation at all, only a sealed data scroll and a waiting storm raven. For most chapters, such requests are honored without question. Some even volunteer their finest without waiting to be asked. A son of the salamanders, the scars, the fists, or the wolves, if chosen, understands. This is not punishment. It is not exile. It is duty in its purest, rawest form. Once chosen, the Astartes departs alone. There is no ceremony. His brothers offer no parting rites, for they know he may never return. He journeys to a watch fortress, often blindfolded, his nav data scrubbed from all records. Upon arrival, he surrenders everything: colors, markings, command chains. He is stripped not only of armor, but of identity. In his place, a new figure is born. He is the Watcher. Clad in black ceramite, with only his chapter's sigil left unaltered, he enters the silence of the Deathwatch. Not to be celebrated, not to be remembered, but to endure. The long vigil is not measured in days, months, or even years. Some serve for a single mission and are never seen again. Others serve for decades, so long that their home chapter forgets their face. There are tales, rare and often suppressed, of Astartes who served in the Deathwatch for so long that their minds frayed and their sense of identity dissolved. Warriors who returned home and could no longer speak their own names, or who refused to answer to anything but Watcher. Because the long vigil changes you. Every mission is different. Every enemy a new monstrosity. There is no pattern, no predictability. You may spend months infiltrating a trade station overtaken by Torellian usurpers, disguised as a servitor crew, eating protein sludge and analyzing waste runoffs to identify biosignatures. Or you might be dropped into an orbital spire with 5 others, told only that the enemy can control machines, and then have your own armor betray you mid-firefight. The vigil breaks down the line between reality and myth, for the Deathwatch does not just fight known threats. They are sent to investigate rumors, phantom sightings, unnamed anomalies. There are records, sealed behind 12 layers of inquisitorial encryption, of kill teams dispatched to investigate entire planets that blinked out of the warp and reappeared with no life, but a single humming monument written in a language that causes blindness. Not every kill team returns. Some are declared missing. Others are simply forgotten. The Watch does not mourn. It learns. Knowledge is the only true weapon in the vigil. In the Deathwatch, warriors are trained not just to kill, but to understand. They study alien biology, psychology, battlefield doctrine. They learn how tyrannids think in hives, how orc spores infect a planet's weather patterns, how Necron reanimation protocols can be disrupted with precise seismic pulses. The vigil demands more than strength. It demands adaptation. A veteran of the Deathwatch might spend 3 years learning how to read rude scent pheromones. Another might spend 6 months with a captured Kroot, testing its reactions to visual stimuli under stress. It is said, though rarely confirmed, that one watch captain developed an entire doctrine of psychological warfare based on the color patterns of Tau Command insignia. And then there is the silence. A watch brother may go weeks without speaking. There are kill teams that operate without ever voxing. Every gesture, every formation, every plan is known without words. They train for it. They live it. When they return to the field, they are more than soldiers. They are an extension of each other's will. It creates bonds stronger than steel, but it also isolates. A Deathwatch Marine does not write to his home chapter. He does not receive reports. He is not told of victories or defeats. Brothers die while he fights beneath alien moons, and he will not know. His gene sires may fall, his fortress may burn, but he does not look back, because the vigil does not end, not for grief, not for loyalty, not for pride. There are moments, rare and often tragic, when a watch brother is recalled. Perhaps his service is deemed complete. Perhaps his chapter petitions his return. Perhaps his injuries have made him unfit for further deployment. He returns to his chapter like a ghost, his armor faded, his voice quieter, his gaze always scanning for threats no one else can see. They call him hero. He calls himself nothing. He returns to his old rights, his old habits. But it never feels right. His bolt gun is too heavy. The armor feels unfamiliar. The chants lack meaning, because part of him is still out there. watching. Not every brother returns willingly. Some request to remain. Others, in silence, simply never leave. They remain in the watch fortresses, taking new missions as they come. Some rise in rank. They become watch sergeants, watch captains, eventually watch masters. Silent giants with kill tallies numbering in the thousands. They forget the warmth of sunlight, the sound of laughter, the taste of anything but nutrient paste and metal. But they remember the vigil. It is whispered that the longest-serving watch brother known was an ultramarine named Archon Valerian. He served over 400 years. No one knows why. Some say he fled a shameful past. Others say he simply never stopped being needed. His name is carved into every kill vault in 3 fortresses. His helm, cracked and scored by xenos talons, is enshrined on Thalassa Prime. It does not smile, it watches. Because that is what the Deathwatch is. It is the shadow that does not blink, the blade that waits without praise, the oath that binds without end. The long vigil is not glorious. It is not spoken of in grand halls or sung by the remembrancers. But it endures, because the xenos threat never sleeps, and so neither can the watch. Before there were protocols, before there were banners in the halls of the watch fortresses, or codified kill team designations, or silent rituals in the obsidian refraction chambers, there was a warrior, a lone thunderstrike amidst the black. His name was spoken with reverence and wariness alike across the stars. Asker Warfist. He was not chosen because he was obedient. He was not chosen because he bowed to the hierarchy of Terra or walked in the shadow of the Codex Astartes. He was chosen because he was impossible to ignore. He was Vilka Fenrika, space wolf born and war-hardened, one of those fabled sons of Fenris who carved legend into every battlefield they touched. To his kin, he was kinslayer, pack brother, hero, madman. To his enemies, he was a nightmare wrapped in ceramite and chainmail, his gauntlets always slick with the blood of beasts that had no name in any human tongue. Before he ever laid eyes on the black of the Deathwatch, Warfist had already bled across a dozen war fronts. He had hunted Hrud through collapsed time faults on Narthex Secundus, broken orc warbands during the Grendel Crusade, and once pulled the thorax from a Trigon Alpha with his bare hands, after being buried alive beneath its brood nest for 9 days. That last deed earned him the name Warfist, not from a Fenrisian tale or saga, but from the gesture he made upon surfacing, raising his bloodied, shattered fist to the sky in defiance of death. It was Corland, the last son of Dorn, who saw something in him few others dared to acknowledge: clarity within chaos. Corland knew that a new kind of warfare was needed, and it demanded a new kind of commander. Not one shackled by rigid dogma, but one who could adapt, endure, and strike when others hesitated. In Warfist, he saw the steel hidden beneath the frost-bitten rage. And so, when the first stones of the Deathwatch were laid, when the vigil demanded a voice, a face, a blade to lead from the front, it was Warfist they turned to. He did not accept easily. The stories speak of his arrival at Thalassa Prime with a keg of Fenrisian ejode strapped to his shoulder, and the skulls of 2 unknown xeno species hanging from his belt. He challenged the watch captains to a duel of endurance, demanding they drink with him, arm wrestle him, and recite the kill oaths of their lineages without hesitation. None could complete all 3. Warfist didn't laugh. He simply nodded, donned his black armor, and took command. His tenure as the first watch commander was not defined by political maneuvering or bureaucratic structure. It was defined by action. Warfist was the architect of aggression. He did not wait for alien threats to manifest fully. He believed in preemptive obliteration. Under his command, the Deathwatch scoured the forgotten corners of Segmentum Obscurus and Pacificus, launching rapid strike campaigns against xenos nests still in their infancy. One of his earliest operations as Watch Commander became legend, the Purge of Pellucidar 9. A frontier mining world near the edge of a long-abandoned Eldar webway gate, Pellucidar 9 had gone dark. The local PDF was presumed compromised. An astropathic burst from a dying seer reported shadows that walked through walls and whispered in binary. Warfist did not wait for confirmation. He assembled 3 kill teams in under 12 hours and deployed via orbital drop directly into the heart of the planet's command spire. They landed into madness. Pale silicon-skinned figures, xenos later identified as the Thoraxian mimes, had invaded the world, feeding off neural resonance, devouring memory and will. They spoke no language. They made no sound. Their presence dissolved morale like acid. Most Imperial forces who faced them collapsed without firing a shot. Not the Deathwatch. Warfist led from the front, wielding a thunderhammer wrapped in iron wolf hide, and a combi melta nicknamed Breath of Morkai. He was the first to breach the spire's inner sanctum, slaying 9 mimes with pinpoint precision, driving the rest into psychic frenzy. The kill teams fanned out like surgical steel, each one guided by Warfist's brutal clarity. He did not simply order kills, he calculated ruptures. He understood how to tear the heart from an alien incursion, where to strike, how to bait, how to end. Within a single night cycle, Pellucidar 9 was cleansed. Only one Astartes fell, his heart stopped mid-chant, his mind broken by a Thoraxian mirror thought. Warfist personally bore his body from the ruins, reciting a Fenrisian death dirge in complete silence. From that moment, there was no questioning his authority. Warfist redefined what it meant to be Deathwatch. He broke down the archaic barriers between chapters, forging unity where there had once been only rivalry. He ordered that training be done in absolute darkness. He introduced the ritual of bloodstone duels, not to establish dominance, but to test nerve and adaptability. He forged the concept of kill pattern specialization, assigning Astartes, not by chapter tactic, but by battlefield instinct. One warrior might be trained in subterranean ambush, another in atmospheric infiltration, another in precision boarding strikes under warp bleed. No one was allowed comfort. Every warrior was forced to unlearn. He once told a newly assembled kill team, "If you think like your chapter, you die like your chapter. Here you think like the xenos, and then you end them." But perhaps his greatest legacy was the creation of the Black Shield Protocol. In those early days, warriors of mysterious or dishonored lineage sometimes came to the Watch. They wore no chapter symbol. They bore no name. Their reasons were never asked. Warfist gave them a place. He saw in them a weapon even the Imperium feared to use, warriors with nothing left to lose. He assigned them to the most dangerous missions, and they excelled. Under his decree, the Black Shields were born, brothers of the Watch without a past, their deeds speaking in place of their identity. Some said Warfist understood them because he too was running from something. The official histories claim he died on Gorok's spine, leading a boarding action against a living Tyrannid bioship the size of a continent. He detonated its synapse node from within, killing the creature and ending the advance of a splinter fleet. No remains were ever recovered. Others say he still lives, somewhere deep in the eastern fringe, leading a kill team that has never stopped fighting. One whispered tale from a Raven Guard librarian speaks of a black-armored warrior who intervened during a Genestealer cult uprising on Sargon 7, wielding a hammer etched with runes no one could translate. He did not speak. He simply fought, and when the battle ended, he vanished. Whether Asger Warfist lives or not, his legacy is carved into every kill team oath, every silent nod before deployment, every black pauldron raised in the darkness of a cold drop pod. He was not a tactician in the mold of Gilliman, nor a saint like Sanguinius. He was a predator, a leader of monsters forged to hunt monsters, and for the warriors of the Deathwatch, there could be no higher ideal. It began, as most of humanity's worst nightmares do, with silence. Not the silence of peace or the cold void between stars. This was a different silence, one that settled like dust over Vox relays, that choked out distress calls mid-transmission, that swallowed entire planetary populations as if they had never existed. When the Deathwatch first learned of the Tyranids, they did not yet have a name. No one did. There were only whispers across the stars, fragments of astropathic static, disappearing scout ships, unexplained planetary extinctions. Worlds that had once been vibrant green turned into gray deserts of scorched bone and lifeless sky. Civilians vanished, armies were devoured, and not a trace remained. But something was watching, hunting, testing. That something came from the void between galaxies, an alien intelligence unlike anything the Imperium had ever encountered. It did not negotiate. It did not leave prisoners. It came not for conquest, but for consumption. It was hunger given form. The first man to truly see the shape of this threat was Inquisitor Cryptman of the Ordo Xenos. He was not like other Inquisitors. Where many sought to burn, purge, or silence, Cryptman listened. He collected inconsistencies, traced patterns across forgotten sectors, chased the threads of things not yet fully real. He began to see the shape of the storm long before it broke. The name Tyranid was his invention, pulled from the doomed world of Tyran, the first planet whose data archives confirmed a pattern. It was there, amidst the ruins of silent cities and glassed oceans, that Cryptman walked alone. What he found was not destruction. It was erasure. No bodies, no weapons, no blood, just emptiness, as though everything that had once lived had been harvested. Cryptman extracted a single xenos corpse from a collapsed mineshaft, a nightmare of chitin and claw, dripping enzymes even in death. It hissed as if still dreaming of the kill. He encased it in a stasis coffin, locked it behind hexagrammatic wards, and sent the warning to Terra. Most ignored him. Others mocked him. But not the Deathwatch. They had encountered the shadows too. Kill teams had been lost in distant sectors, entire veteran squads gone dark during reconnaissance in the eastern fringe. One after another, they failed to report back. Missions marked as non-recoverable began to stack like bones in the Deathwatch archives. Unusual biosigns, sensor echoes in hard vacuum, disappearances at the edge of reach. Cryptman's warning gave the Watch the pattern they needed, and it was not long before that pattern became a tidal wave. The Tyranid threat surged into Imperial space with the coming of High Fleet Behemoth. It was not an invasion. It was an extinction. The Tyranids moved not with ships, but with living leviathans. Their fleets were composed of star-faring organisms kilometers in length, their spores infesting planetary atmospheres, their broods erupting from soil like tumors in reality itself. World after world fell. Defenses crumbled. Conventional tactics meant nothing. Every time the Imperium adapted, the Swarm did too. Every biological structure was purposeful, each gene stealer a vanguard, each warrior beast a weapon of evolution. The Tyranids did not learn. They remembered. It was on the world of Tarsis Ultra that the Deathwatch struck back. Tarsis Ultra was a fortress world, fortified, regimented, with hardened PDF units and a significant space marine presence under the command of Captain Uriel Ventris of the Ultramarines. But when the Hive fleet arrived, all its defenses amounted to nothing more than toothpicks against a tidal wave. Cryptmen arrived in orbit aboard the Heraclitus, bearing sealed orders and the sanction of the Ordo Xenos. With him came Kill Team Damaris, 5 Deathwatch veterans, each a killer forged in the crucible of countless alien wars. They were not there to hold the line. They were there to uncover the enemy's secrets, and if necessary, to destroy the planet to keep those secrets from spreading. Kill Team Damaris inserted behind swarm lines, using tunneling drop pods and grav-inverted descent capsules that burned through atmosphere like comet streaks. They fought not for ground, but for knowledge, capturing biospecimens, targeting synapse organisms, tracking the flow of the hive mind itself. Each warrior carried a specific role, a Raven Guard scout with cloaking tech that fooled even Tyranid electroscent, a Crimson Fist demolitions expert who could level a brood nest in under 10 seconds, a mortificator apothecary, silent and mask-faced, who harvested neurospinal cores from still-living Xenos horrors for study, and a leader, Watch Sergeant Tavrex of the Iron Hands, whose left side was entirely cybernetic and whose right eye never blinked. He was the first to observe the central synapse link in action, the invisible psychic web connecting all Tyranids, directing them as a singular organism. The kill team's greatest find was an exposed Norn queen gestating in a deep hibernation cavern beneath the planet's surface. Realizing that this organism could spawn entire new evolutionary branches of the hive mind, they enacted a surgical strike. They did not attack directly. Instead, they destabilized the geothermal plates beneath the cavern and collapsed the entire mountain range onto the target. They escaped with one broken limb among them. The data they gathered shaped the next decades of the vigil. From that mission onward, the Deathwatch changed how it approached the Tyranid threat. Kill teams began to focus not on extermination, but disruption. Hive ships were infiltrated with vortex bombs. Genestealer cults were quietly terminated before they could summon the Hive. Synapse leaders were assassinated mid-battle, throwing entire broods into disarray. The vigil shifted into a new gear, counter-evolution. No other foe forced the Deathwatch to adapt so rapidly, or so constantly. They developed new rounds, acidic payloads that mimicked Tyranid biotoxins, bolt shells that released bursts of neuroelectrical pulses to fry Xenos' minds. The Hellfire round became a staple, capable of liquefying Tyranid internals with a single shot. Entire training programs were constructed around Hive fleet tactics. Deathwatch chaplains began to instruct recruits on the behavior of swarm logic, teaching them how to think like prey that fights back. And still, the swarm grew. Cryptman continued to push boundaries. When Hive fleet Leviathan emerged, threatening Segmentum Tempestus, he ordered a decision that would blacken his name in many Imperial archives. He forcibly redirected the Tyranid swarm toward the Orc Empire of Octarius, reasoning that the two could annihilate each other. He was censured for the act, stripped of authority. But the Deathwatch, they kept his lessons. They understood that against the Tyranids, morality was a weapon that could not always be afforded. The vigil against the Tyranids became one of attrition, sacrifice, and genius. The Watch fought not to win, but to stall, to study, to wound. Each mission was a scalpel cut to bleed the hive mind without alerting it to the blade's source. And slowly, patterns began to emerge. Hive minds adapting slower in cold environments, broods avoiding specific electromagnetic frequencies, spore dispersal rates dropping in the presence of certain radiation blooms. The vigil accumulated truths the Imperium's armies never even imagined existed. Every Deathwatch kill team that fell to the Tyranids became a lesson. Every martyrdom a data point, every bolt shell a warning. Because they understood one thing above all, the Tyranids were not just another alien race. They were the end, and the only thing that stood between them and the extinction of mankind was the Watch, unseen, unsung. unyielding. It is one thing to survive a storm, another entirely to trick it into devouring itself. When Hive Fleet Leviathan descended from the galactic south in late EME 41, it did not come like its predecessors. It did not announce itself with massive bioships blotting out the void or waves of synapse beasts screaming through the Imperium. It came like a whisper, a breeze of flesh and hunger beneath the perception of Imperial augurs. Worlds simply went dark, communications severed, life signs vanishing, orbital stations hollowed out and smeared with acid-burned bone. And then the screaming began. Inquisitor Fidus Cryptman had survived Hive Fleet Behemoth. He had seen firsthand what the Tyranids did to planets, to people, to hope. But Leviathan was different. It wasn't a single spear point, it was a crescent-shaped tide sweeping across Segmentum Tempestus and Solar alike, consuming everything from the edge of Ultima Segmentum to the blackness of the halo stars. It adapted faster, struck harder, spread wider. Behemoth had been the test. Leviathan was the executioner. Where others scrambled, Cryptman acted. He began what would become the most controversial and brutal strategy ever employed by a servant of the Inquisition, and one of the most cunningly lethal campaigns in Deathwatch history. It began with the quarantine zones. Cryptmen, reading patterns of hive vectoring and biogalactic spread, ordered exterminatus upon dozens of border worlds, not because they were infected, but to starve the swarm. He burned planets that could have been saved, cutting off biomass and creating dead space between the Tyranids and the Imperium's soft underbelly. It bought time, days, weeks at most, but that was enough. Enough to draw the blade. The Deathwatch responded in force. Kill teams were dispatched to every fringe outpost where the swarm had made contact, not to hold the line, but to pierce its heart, to sever command organisms, to delay digestion processes, to detonate entire biomass harvesters from within using warp-triggered explosives and gene-coded virus bombs. One such mission, codenamed Operation Gallows Pyre, deployed Kill Team Seraphon to the world of Dolamax Theta, a hive sprawl already 78% consumed. The team was composed of 7. A Black Shield apothecary whose name was stricken from all records, an ultramarine sergeant, a Raven Guard infiltration specialist, a Carcharodon boarding expert, a salamander tech adept, and 2 Iron Hands heavy weapons veterans. Their objective: locate and destroy the gestating dominatrix-class organism burrowed beneath the planet's primary equatorial biomass trench. They descended into hell. Dolamax was no longer a world. It was a wound. Everything pulsed. The very ground beat like a heart. Clouds dripped acidic rain. The sky itself breathed. The Deathwatch carved their way through mile-long capillary tunnels, fighting off hordes of bioengineered horrors with bolt rounds adapted for hyper-evolution, rounds that fragmented into protein-shredding mist. The kill team advanced inch by inch, losing one of the Iron Hands to an ambush by a lictor that dissolved him into carbon ash in under 3 seconds. But they reached the target. What they found wasn't just a beast. It was a mind. The dominatrix exuded synaptic pressure like a gravity well, thoughts boiling the blood, memories fraying at the edges. Even the ultramarine faltered, nearly turning his weapon on his own squad. It was the Black Shield who acted, leaping through a tide of feeder beasts and injecting a triple-dose neurophage into the monster's brainstem before being torn apart by psychic backlash. The explosion that followed was tectonic. The planet cracked. More importantly, the local tendril of Leviathan buckled. 100,000 gaunts across multiple systems fell to the ground in screaming, spasming agony. The Deathwatch had severed the nerve, and in doing so created the first ever documented mass stall of a Tyranid hive vector. That was the beginning. From there, the tactics changed. The Watch adapted faster than the Swarm. They began deploying synapse decapitation teams, micro-units dropped by stealth drone into hive ship interiors, their sole purpose to eliminate zoanthropes and neurotyrants in under 2 minutes. Every kill created confusion. Confusion meant inefficiency, and inefficiency slowed the Swarm. But Cryptman was not finished. He saw a chance, a monstrous, impossible chance. The Octarius sector, long home to one of the largest orc empires ever documented, lay to the galactic east. Brutal, primitive, and constantly at war with itself, the sector had long been a graveyard for exploration and colonization. But to Cryptman, it was something more. It was bait. He theorized that the Tyranids, drawn to biomass and aggression, would be attracted to the psychic violence of the orc Wah if exposed to it. The orcs, always looking for a fight, would welcome the challenge. So he made an offering. Using Deathwatch operatives embedded deep within cultic cells across multiple hive spires, Cryptman facilitated the transport of Tyranid gene seed and brood specimens to a feral orc world on the edge of the Octarius sector. When the biosignal began broadcasting, Leviathan took the bait. What followed was the most brutal symbiotic war in the Imperium's modern history. Tyranids versus orcs, an endless meat grinder. A war neither side could retreat from, nor afford to lose. The Deathwatch watched it unfold from afar. Cryptman's gambit had succeeded. The Swarm had been diverted, but the price was steep. Billions of lives had been sacrificed. Dozens of planetary systems had been condemned to ensure the war lasted. And even now, centuries later, the Octarian War still burns, a furnace of biomass where two titanic species tear at each other endlessly. The Deathwatch call it the Silent War, not because it is quiet, but because they do not speak of it. They still send kill teams into the heart of the conflict, not to help, to watch, to learn, to ensure neither side wins too quickly. Some see it as monstrous, others see it as necessary. The Watch sees it as the vigil fulfilled. Because the Leviathan Gambit was not about morality, it was not about heroism, it was about survival, humanity's survival. And if sacrificing the Octarius sector bought the Imperium 10 more years of life, it was a price the Watch was willing to pay. Cryptman disappeared not long after, stripped of rank, condemned by the High Lords. Some say he lives still, operating from the shadows, guiding the vigil from beyond the veil of bureaucracy. Others say he was consumed by the very Swarm he sought to outwit. But his legacy remains. Every time a kill team boards a hive ship, every time a brood lord is felled in the dark, every time a genestealer cult is burned before it births a psychic scream into the void, Cryptman's war continues. The Leviathan Gambit is not over, because the Swarm is never done, and so neither is the Deathwatch. The Inquisition is a whisper in the dark. It is a blade that does not shine, a law that writes itself in fire and silence. Across the Imperium, its many ordos hunt different enemies, demons, traitors, psychers, heretics. But there is one ordo whose foe does not wear familiar faces or whisper lies in the tongues of man. One that faces down that which cannot be reasoned with, converted or cowed. The alien, the ordo xenos. And to strike for this ordo, to wield the Emperor's judgment in its name, is the Deathwatch's solemn charge. But this charge did not begin in full on the day of its creation. It was not declared in a grand convocation or etched in stone on Terra. It grew in secret. It evolved, like the very foes it was meant to destroy. At first, the Deathwatch existed as an answer to a crisis. The Beast, the rising xenos incursions, the slow realization that the galaxy's edges teemed with monsters bred beyond reason. They were a weapon forged out of desperation. But over time, it became clear they were something more. Not just a weapon, but a doctrine. Not a stopgap. a necessity. And so the alliance between the Deathwatch and the Ordo Xenos deepened. No longer merely an experimental force or a borrowed blade, the Deathwatch was officially declared the chamber militant of the Ordo Xenos, a military extension of the Inquisition itself. A shield, a spear, a scalpel. Whatever the Ordo required, the Deathwatch would deliver. But such a relationship is no simple thing. The Inquisition, by its very nature, tolerates no disobedience. It acts with absolute authority, bound only by its internal codes and the judgment of its own ranks. For most arms of the Imperium, Astra Militarum, planetary governors, even the Adeptus Mechanicus, an Inquisitor's word is law, and woe to any who refuse. But the Adeptus Astartes are not so easily commanded. They are the Emperor's angels, the last remnants of his gene-born sons, and they serve according to their own sacred traditions. No chapter bows to another. No chapter allows its warriors to be treated as expendable pawns. The balance between Inquisition and Astartes is fragile, often strained. Entire wars have erupted when that balance is upset. It is in this crucible of tension that the Deathwatch exists, because the Deathwatch is both. It is Space Marine and Inquisitorial Blade. Its warriors are drawn from chapters across the Imperium, but once they take the Vigil, they answer to a different authority. Their orders do not come from chapter masters, from reclusiarchs, or even high marshals. They come from the Watchmasters, and behind them, from the Ordo Xenos. But that does not mean the Deathwatch obey blindly. The relationship between the Deathwatch and the Ordo is one of oath, not ownership. Inquisitors cannot simply take command of a kill team. They must request, negotiate, justify. The Watchmasters listen, and then they choose. It is a delicate dance, and the Deathwatch is careful in its steps, because they know the truth. The Inquisition is fallible. Brilliant, ruthless, devoted, but still fallible. A mission ordered in haste or ignorance could doom a world. A kill team deployed without context could waste their lives on a false threat, while a real one festers in the dark. And so, the Deathwatch developed its own network of intelligence, its own archivists, its own analysts and seers. Within the sealed halls of watch fortresses like Thalassa Prime, alien threats are studied not just in flesh, but in pattern. Entire chambers are devoted to xenos behavioral psychology, evolutionary trends, and migratory mapping. In many ways, the Deathwatch knows the xenos better than the Inquisition itself. This tension has flared into conflict more than once. There was the Kavran Rift incident, where an Inquisitor Lord named Strave ordered a full deployment of Deathwatch forces to purge what he claimed was a burgeoning Necron tomb complex. The Watchmaster at Andronicus Station refused, citing that intelligence from 3 separate kill teams suggested the tomb was already in disrepair, its core systems collapsed. Strave attempted to assert dominance. He threatened sanction. The Watchmaster responded by activating Protocol Steel Silence, a rare invocation that locks down all Deathwatch operations under autonomous jurisdiction, severing external command. Strave's forces launched a strike without Deathwatch support. 2 weeks later, they were all dead. The Watch was vindicated, but the cost was high. These incidents taught both parties valuable lessons. The Inquisition learned that while the Deathwatch was theirs in name, it could not be wielded like a simple blade. It had a mind, a will, and a deep, ancient knowledge. The Deathwatch, in turn, learned how to work with the Ordo Xenos, when to listen, when to push back, and when to disappear into the void without waiting for approval. Inquisitors who understand this balance earn the respect of the Watch. Figures like Inquisitor Apollyon, who once served embedded with a kill team for over 15 years, wearing modified carapace armor and sharing in every danger. Or Inquisitor Naira Vost, who developed entire tactical libraries on the neural decay rates of Tyrellian thought beasts, aiding kill teams in neutralizing them before their psionic self-detonation reflex could activate. These Inquisitors are not commanders. They are partners, allies in the Vigil. When such harmony is achieved, the results are devastatingly effective. During the penance of Osirian, a xenos outbreak of crystalline parasites threatened to overtake an ecclesiarchy reliquary world. The Ordo Xenos authorized full sterilization, but a Deathwatch kill team, working in tandem with Inquisitor Vost, discovered the parasites were being used as biocoding transmitters by a rogue Xenos intelligence. Instead of burning the world, they traced the signal to a hidden asteroid hive and destroyed the source. Osirian was saved, and the parasite threat was neutralized in its entirety. It was not brute force that won that battle. It was cooperation, precision, respect. And yet, the Alliance remains one of shadows. The public never hears of the Deathwatch. The High Lords rarely speak of them. The Inquisition denies their existence when asked. Even most Astartes chapters maintain only minimal records of the warriors they send to the Vigil. Because the Vigil is not about glory, it is about necessity. The Ordo Xenos does not need banners, it needs victories. It does not need soldiers, it needs hunters. And that is what the Deathwatch is. Not a chapter, not an army, but a blade hidden in the folds of the Imperium's robe, drawn only when the alien threat rears its head too far, and then buried again before anyone sees the blood. The alliance between the Ordo and the Deathwatch is not perfect. It never was. But it is effective. It endures. Because both know the truth. The alien does not sleep, and neither can the ones who kill it. The Deathwatch does not fight wars in the traditional sense. They do not campaign for territory. They do not besiege cities or claim victory through overwhelming numbers. Their wars are quieter, sharper, like scalpels cutting into infected flesh. They fight not against nations or ideologies, but against the unthinkable, species beyond comprehension, intelligences birthed in madness, predators that prey on empires, not individuals. The Deathwatch fights the alien, but alien is too small a word for the things they face. Every kill team, every watch fortress, every carved name in the basalt slabs of Thalassa Prime represents an engagement not against a mere enemy, but against a different reality. To battle Xenos is to war against biology, psychology, and physics themselves. It is to confront enemies who do not share your morality, your thought processes, or your weaknesses, and who see humanity not as an opponent, but as food, as breeding ground, or as a curiosity to dissect. These are not foes that can be reasoned with, only destroyed. The Deathwatch knows them by their true names. The Necrons, deathless kings of a time before time. They rise not from the warp, but from beneath the surface of ancient worlds, shedding the dirt of 1 billion years like dust from old bone. Their warriors are not alive, but animated by a cold intelligence that never forgets. Their technology is silent, clean, and impossibly advanced. A single Necron warrior is more than a match for a human platoon. A single lord can shift the balance of a planetary invasion. The Watch learned this hard lesson on Jarian's Fall, where Kill Team Virex was deployed to investigate a signal pulse emanating from beneath a long-abandoned Mechanicus Forge world. They found a Necron tomb complex blooming like a metallic flower, layers of living metal twisting into formation. The tomb was awakening, but not yet hostile. The Deathwatch struck first. They planted gravitic charges, melted monolith pylons, and overloaded phase array conductors. They shattered the tomb's reanimation matrix before it could activate fully, turning what would have been a planetary extermination event into a containment success. The kill team lost 2 members in the escape, both consumed by dimensional disintegration fields, but their sacrifice buried the tomb. It bought the sector 2 more centuries of peace. Then there are the Eldari, divided, fragmented, and dying, yet still among the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. The Deathwatch does not underestimate them. No one who has faced an Eldari exarch and lived ever does. To fight the Eldari is to fight ghosts with blades of thought. They move faster than the eye can follow. Their weapons strike where armor is weakest, and they fight with the sorrow of a race that knows it cannot win but refuses to surrender. Worse still are the Drukhari, their dark kin. During the Thorns of Illith campaign, a rogue dark Eldar cabal began harvesting entire populations from fringe mining colonies. The Deathwatch was sent not to liberate, but to interrupt. Kill Teams Omega and Calyx staged a brutal, silent incursion into the enemy's staging realm through a webway breach. They did not fire upon arrival. Instead, they planted vortex bombs at the webway's structural nexus, then fought their way backward, drawing the Drukhari into pursuit. When the charges detonated, an entire cabal was lost, its access route erased from existence. The Deathwatch returned bloodied but victorious. The mining colonies remained empty, but the harvesters would not return. Then come the Orcs, the Green Tide, loud, brutal, and insatiable. To the common Imperial citizen, Orcs are brutish savages, loud and crude. But to the Deathwatch, they are far more than that. Orcs are a self-sustaining ecosystem of violence, a species that grows in battle, thrives on death, and adapts through instinct. The longer they're left to fight, the stronger they become. The Deathwatch's approach is surgical. They do not aim to win battles. They aim to unmake warlords. They strike at the weird boys before they can call down warp storms. They destroy mechs and loot factories, collapsing the fragile infrastructure that holds a way together. They assassinate knobs in the dead of night, seeding distrust and infighting among the ranks. On Grimvault Delta, Kill Team Ignis poisoned the fungus groves beneath an Orc moon, infecting the spore generation matrix. Within weeks, the Wah had starved itself into disarray. No fanfare, no final battle, just silence. But not all enemies are so crude. Some are insidious. The Tau Empire offers not slaughter, but unity. They preach peace, cooperation, a vision of galactic harmony under their rule. They corrupt not through fear, but through ideals. They appeal to logic, to reason, and for some that is the most dangerous infection of all. The Deathwatch does not debate. They infiltrate. They sabotage. Kill Team Icarian once posed as planetary defense advisors for 3 standard years on Ilara's Veil, slowly unraveling a Toe-influenced cell embedded within the upper echelons of the Governor's Council. When the moment came, they executed 17 targets in under 2 minutes, framed the entire operation as a rival planetary conspiracy, and left the population none the wiser. The Deathwatch does not fight fire with fire. They smother the spark before the blaze begins. Then there are the species so rare or incomprehensible that they do not exist in any Imperial record. Beasts of smoke and light, hive minds contained within single polyhedral organisms, silicon-based predators that infect machine spirits, sentient void shadows that only kill during solar eclipses. The Watch has names for them. Names that don't appear on any data slate or Mechanicus archive. Project Dreadglass, the Wailing Seed, the Saphir Hypothesis, the Star that Eats. Only the Watch knows, only the Watch remembers. And always there are the Tyranids. The Watch fights them in every corner of the galaxy, boarding hive ships, infiltrating brood nests, hunting cults before their psychic screams can reach the void. It is never enough, but it is always necessary. Because the Deathwatch knows this above all, the Xenos does not sleep, it does not rest. It learns, it grows, and if left alone, it will return stronger. So the Deathwatch stays vigilant. They study, they adapt, they strike. There is no honor in what they do, no glory, no banners raised or songs sung. Their victories are measured in what doesn't happen, the tomb that doesn't open, the world that isn't consumed, the enemy that never gets the chance to strike. And though the galaxy may never thank them, though the Imperium itself may forget them, the Deathwatch continues its sacred task, because every alien they kill is one less threat to humanity, and every time they fall, it is with their eyes open, watching, learning, waiting for the next enemy. No banners hang in the halls of the Deathwatch, no chapter icons carved into marble, no vaulted chapels echo with hymns of triumph. And yet, in the shadowed chambers beneath watch fortresses, behind sealed vaults and canted black steel doors, the names are there, etched into the very stone, not as legends, but as warnings, as reminders. Because the Deathwatch does not raise monuments to the living, it remembers the dead. And among those dead, among the forgotten, the erased, and the martyrs, walk legends whose names are spoken only in silence, heroes of the Long Watch. They are not known across the Imperium. Their deeds are not retold to inspire recruits or uplift civilians. Their triumphs are often kept classified, their missions redacted, their identities buried. But within the Deathwatch, they are eternal. The first among these to be remembered is Watchmaster Kair Valen, once of the Iron Hands, who led the Phantom Concord during the purging of Forge Heliox. Heliox was already half consumed by a technovirus of xenos origin, machines turning against their masters, data wraiths infecting sacred code, the Omnissiah's name twisted into static. Valen's kill team didn't assault the corrupted Spire cities head-on. They infiltrated through subdermal maintenance ducts, bypassed machine defenses by syncing their own augmetics to mimic the viral signature. For 10 days, they moved unseen, cutting through servitor-laced catacombs where even light turned against them. When they reached the central cogitator core, Valen did not destroy it. He became it. He connected his mind to the neural data web of the corrupted Forge. It killed him, body, soul, and spirit, but not before he fed it a false echo, a poison pattern. His last thought became a recursive loop that burned the virus out from within. Heliox survived, but Valen was never recovered. In the Watch Vault, his armor stands upright in a containment cell that hums with data madness. No one enters. No one speaks his name aloud. He is still watching. Then there is Sister Sergeant Alyssa Torwin, a rare instance of a Deathwatch liaison from the Order's militant. Some scoff at the idea, a sister of battle walking among the Astartes. But Alyssa was no simple envoy. She was brought into the Watch following her execution of an entire ecclesiarchal delegation found to be harboring a xenos parasite known as the Dray Seed. She volunteered for the Vigil as penance. Assigned to kill Team Judicar, she became their blade and conscience alike. It was Torwin who first discovered that the Dray Seed could burrow into faith itself, turning belief into vector. She willingly infected herself during an encounter on Lorax Prime, enduring 7 days of psychic rot and convulsive agony while her team mapped its transmission paths in real time. On the final day, she walked into the center of the infected cathedral, clutching a relic purity seal that had belonged to her sister. She ignited the building's promethium veins, reciting the Creed of Flame, even as the parasite burned her from within. Her ashes were collected by Kill Team Judicar. The skull of the Dray Queen now sits sealed in stasis on Thalassa Prime, tagged with one name, Alyssa. Faith made fire. Some heroes do not even bear names. Among the most revered is the Black Shield, known only as the Hollow. His origins are unknown. His armor is non-standard. He speaks only through coded pulses. But wherever he is sent, the mission succeeds. always. The Hollow has fought in every segmentum. He has slain a broodlord with a broken chain blade. He once stood alone against an entire Kroot war pack, allowing his kill team to escape by sealing himself inside a gravity-dead dome with the enemy. 78 confirmed kills. He was found 3 days later, still breathing, surrounded by corpses. When asked what had happened, he only replied, "They forgot to watch." He has never left the vigil, refuses retirement, refuses command. He arrives where needed, he kills. Then he disappears. There are others, lesser known but no less honored. Watch Captain Safin the Ash-Blooded, who survived the biomeld horrors of the Val Gorge by setting fire to his own lungs, purging the spores inside and continuing the mission without vocal function. Inquisitor Correspondent Morn Talaxis, who operated embedded within the Deathwatch for 70 years, his notes forming the basis of the famed Codex Xenos Obscura, a restricted document detailing over 400 undocumented species and Xenos subtypes. Lexicanum Dren of the Blood Ravens, whose psychic foresight allowed him to intercept a Xenos invasion 20 minutes before it erupted from beneath the crust of Camnoth II. He died enacting a containment ritual that locked the enemy in a stasis sink for 2 centuries. His name is carved into a stone slab in the Watch Librarius. None can read it, but all stop and touch it when passing. These are the heroes of the Long Vigil. But heroism in the Deathwatch is not always grand. Sometimes it is a matter of minutes, of choosing to detonate a warhead inside your own drop pod to stop a boarding action, of holding a corridor for 10 seconds longer so the data core can be evacuated, of realizing that your mind has been compromised by Xenos psychic influence and activating the gene lock detonation sequence in your brainstem before you betray your brothers. In these moments, the Watch becomes more than a brotherhood. It becomes a flame that consumes itself so the galaxy might live another hour. Not all of them are remembered. Not all of them can be. Sometimes entire kill teams vanish. No signal, no trace. They are marked as lost to the Vigil, and their service ends not in glory, but in a line of static in the records. Still, a single pauldron is kept in the Hall of Absence, black, unadorned, polished, for each one a brother who gave everything. And the Watch remembers, because to forget is to die. Every young Astartes who dons the black sees those names etched into the walls, not to inspire, but to prepare. The Vigil is not about survival. It is not about honor. It is not about glory. It is about sacrifice. Cold, brutal, deliberate sacrifice. These heroes were not immortal. They were not invincible. They were not chosen by prophecy or blessed by fate. They were there. And when the galaxy called for something more than a warrior, when it demanded a blade sharpened to the point of extinction, these were the ones who answered. They did not ask to be remembered. But they are, in silence, in shadows, in every black pauldron that slips from orbit into fire and alien darkness, never expecting to return. Because the Vigil remembers its dead, and in doing so ensures that their watch never ends. There is no end to the war against the Xenos. Not in 1,000 lifetimes, not across 10,000 stars, not even if the Emperor himself rose from the Golden Throne and led the charge. Because the Xenos does not rest, it does not pause, it adapts, it thrives, and it comes again, always in new forms, with new faces, wearing new horrors like masks in a madman's carnival. And in the dark, waiting for them, always waiting, is the Deathwatch. This is the truth of the endless vigil. To the ordinary citizen of the Imperium, the alien threat is distant, abstract, a thing glimpsed in pict reels, whispered in the rhetoric of the ecclesiarchy, or blamed for famines, blackouts, and disappearances. Few know how close extinction creeps every day, how many times the galaxy has teetered on the edge, saved not by armies, but by handfuls of warriors striking in the silence before the scream. It is the Deathwatch who turns the tide before it ever rises. The vigil is not simply a duty. It is a rhythm, a cycle without respite. A kill team returns from a warp-fractured orc moon where fungi howl psionically through metal corridors, only to be redeployed to a mining colony infected with crystalline serpents that feed on sound. There is no rest. There is no rotation. Only another mission, another anomaly, another world in need of fire. Across the galaxy, watch fortresses remain ever lit, their strategiums glowing dimly with the scarlet sigils of emergent threats. Machine spirits whisper warnings in binaric tongues, translating xenos' warp bursts into astropathic dread. Voxaugers sweep the stars for patterns that don't belong, cross-referencing thousands of alien signatures every second. Even still, it is never enough. So the Deathwatch moves, unceasing. Some missions take hours, some years. On Syraxis Delta, a single kill team operated for over a decade behind enemy lines, moving from hive to hive, sabotaging Tyranid biomass farms and disrupting brood gestation rhythms. They lived beneath the crust, fed by ration packs and reprocessed moisture, the sound of digestion chambers echoing above them like distant thunder. When the final gene spire collapsed, they sent their extraction signal with only 3 of the original 9 members still breathing. Then they requested reassignment. Elsewhere on the forge world of Mirgosol, the Ordo Xenos uncovered an ancient Xenos AI trapped beneath the planet's crust, a remnant from the dark age of technology. The Mechanicus wanted to study it. The Ecclesiarchy wanted to destroy it. The Deathwatch understood it could not be either. Kill Team Volgrin descended through shafts of molten steel and broken catacombs, facing not creatures of flesh, but logic incarnate. Defense drones that bent gravity, codes that killed with sound, traps that turned time itself inside out. The mission report was sealed. The fortress was erased from Imperial records. The Watch did not speak of it again. This is the nature of the Vigil. It does not seek thanks. It does not expect remembrance. Every action is a delay, a reprieve, a stalling of the inevitable. There are victories, yes, but they are temporary. Today a world is saved. Tomorrow 3 more burn. The Deathwatch does not mourn. It endures. Because the moment it stops, the galaxy falls. Even the watch fortresses themselves are not sanctuaries. They are war engines, bastions carved from asteroid husks, lunar ruins, forgotten mechanicum citadels, each one unique, each one a crucible. Their corridors are narrow, designed for maximum defensibility. Their armories are locked behind genetic encryption and ancient kill runes. Their training halls never sleep. Even during false peace, they echo with drills, simulations, and the hum of bolters discharging into Xenos' sculpted effigies. Within their halls, Astartes live in silence. A Deathwatch Marine does not fraternize. He does not reminisce. He does not complain. When not on mission, he studies, learns. He trains against holograms of enemies most have never seen. He memorizes the weaknesses of races whose names have no human syllables. He meditates in stasis cells designed to replicate the void. He prepares, always. There are no celebrations when a mission ends. There are no mourning rites when a kill team does not return. Only reassignment. The rituals of the Long Vigil are not about comfort. They are about continuity. Every brother knows, if he falls, another will take his place. And if that one falls, another still. Because the Vigil cannot break. Even the gene seed of fallen warriors is treated differently within the Watch. Where most chapters would enshrine it in sacred halls or honor its legacy with songs, the Deathwatch extracts, catalogs, and returns it in silence. No ceremony, no words, just a cold, precise handover to an apothecary, followed by a new name on the black stone wall. Some watch fortresses go centuries without seeing the same chapter represented twice. Others have strange lineages. 3 sons of Mortarion serving alongside a white scar, a raven guard, and a flame falcon. No questions are asked, no oaths of brotherhood are exchanged, and yet, when the ramp drops and the kill team steps into the fire, they move as one, because the vigil demands unity, not loyalty, function, not pride. And as the centuries roll on, the Deathwatch endures through countless unseen wars. During the Lanavar Reclamation, while the Imperium celebrated the return of a lost Forge world, a Deathwatch kill team quietly eradicated a hybrid species attempting to infiltrate the Mechanicus ranks, creatures bred from human flesh and xenos neural tissues. The public never knew. The Watch had finished its mission before the first banners were raised. In the Scarvus Rift, where warp storms birthed strange stellar phantoms that devoured matter and identity alike, the Deathwatch deployed a single librarian to sever the psychic anchor point. He succeeded. He has not spoken since. The galaxy is filled with stories like these. Most are never told. Those that are rarely reach outside the Inquisition's vaults. But the Watch continues, even as new threats rise, silent invasions from the fringes of known space, shadow wars fought beneath the crust of hive cities, ancient races stirring from torpor. The Deathwatch is there, preparing, calculating, striking. They are not a crusade, they are not a legion. They are the hand that draws the knife before the body knows it's bleeding. And in that silence, in that grim and tireless resolve, they hold the line for a galaxy that does not know it is defended. The endless vigil does not seek victory. It does not seek recognition. It seeks only to hold one more day, one more system, one more spark of humanity in the dark. And when the stars themselves go quiet and the last Watch Brother draws his blade, he will not ask why, because he will already know. The vigil ends only with the galaxy, not before. The galaxy has split. In the wake of the Cicatrix Maledictum, the Great Rift, the Imperium lies broken across a bleeding sky. Millions of systems now drift in the darkness of the Noctis Eterna, cut off from the light of the Astronomicon. Warp storms rage like open wounds across reality. Demons stalk real space like wolves through an unguarded pen, and the screams of the dying echo endlessly in every astropathic channel. Civilizations fall without a whisper. Hope, where it still exists, is a flickering thing. But amid the fire and the shadows, something moves still, unseen, unyielding. The Deathwatch remains. If anything, the shattering of the galaxy has not diminished the vigil. It has intensified it. Every kill team, every watch fortress, every oath-bound Astartes in black has found themselves facing the greatest flood of xenos threats the Imperium has ever known. For the galaxy's fragmentation has not only weakened the Imperium, it has emboldened the alien. Hive fleets no longer drift in singular spears. They splinter and surge, devouring vulnerable sectors while Imperial reinforcements flail helplessly behind warp storm curtains. Orc empires, once localized, now surge outward with renewed violence as psychic energy from the Great Rift fuels wars of unprecedented scale. Eldar warbands, embittered and fractured, pursue their own secretive ends, while Drukhari raiding parties swarm across disconnected star systems with a predator's glee. And through it all, the Necrons awaken, not slowly, not cautiously, but in force. Entire tomb worlds, once buried in silence, rise in coordinated bursts of cold, green fire. Dynasties long thought dead march under new standards, their protocols refreshed, their technology refined. The galaxy reels under their precision. Worlds fall in a single planetary rotation, consumed not by fury, but by mathematical annihilation. It is into this rising storm that the Deathwatch now wades, heavily outnumbered, unrelentingly outgunned, but not undone. They are the Black Sentinels, the blade in the night reforged in the crucible of the 42nd millennium. Change, even within the Deathwatch, has come. Not by choice, but by necessity, with the return of Robout Guilliman and the founding of the Indomitus Crusade. A new generation of space marines was unleashed upon the galaxy. The Primaris, taller, stronger, bearing weapons of strange and powerful design. Many within the Adeptus Astartes watched them with suspicion. Some embraced them, others scorned them. But the Deathwatch? They adapted. Always. The first Primaris warriors inducted into the Deathwatch came from chapters already aligned closely with the Ordo Xenos, the Crimson Fists, the Silver Skulls, the Nova Marines. At first, they trained separately, tested, examined, evaluated, not for loyalty, but for compatibility. Could these new warriors understand the rhythm of the Watch? Could they silence their pride, their inherited rivalries, and operate as part of the Blade? The answer came not in words, but in blood, on Vault World Baraxus, where a Xenos entity known only as the Verdant Coil had infected the planetary biosphere. A kill team composed of 5 Primaris intercessors and 2 veteran firstborn Astartes descended into what remained of the world's agricultural heartland. The coil's infection mutated rapidly, spores turning to vine, vine to tendril, tendril to sentient root mass. It was thought the Primaris, new to the Watch's doctrine, would falter, that their unfamiliarity with Deathwatch protocols would break cohesion. Instead, they burned the infection out from within, using incendiary grenade patterns combined with overlapping fields of fire and thermal suffocation tactics. The firstborn veteran, a Dark Angel, later reported, "They moved like they'd always been there. The black fits them." From that day onward, the Watch opened its gates fully to Primaris reinforcements. Not without challenge, not without consequence. The biological divide between Primaris and Firstborn still lingers. Subtle differences in metabolism, tactical preference, and spiritual interpretation. Some Watch fortresses struggle with integration. Others, like Watch Fortress Orthrus and Thalassa Prime, have embraced the fusion, creating hybrid kill teams that utilize both the sheer force of Primaris with the surgical precision of long-serving veterans. Even their war gear has evolved. Primaris Hellblasters carrying plasma incinerators now operate alongside Sternguard veterans with combi weapons modified for alien anatomy. Aggressors deploy against Tyrannid swarms with flame gauntlets tuned to anti-organic resonance, while Rivers, masters of stealth and terror, are unleashed in Xenos-occupied hives to spread confusion and disorder before the strike. The black has grown broader, deeper, deadlier. New threats demand new answers. In recent cycles, the Deathwatch has encountered alien species never catalogued by the Inquisition. Warp-born intelligences masquerading as refugees, species that weaponize emotion, whole civilizational clusters that bend probability through unknown means. In the wake of the rift, the walls between realities have thinned, and with it, the threshold of Xenos incursion. The Watch responds as it always has, not with diplomacy, but with precision. Entire Watch fortresses now specialize in specific alien adversaries. The Watch of Pharos Obscura, orbiting a null-gravity star, trains exclusively for engagements with Necron forces, utilizing magnetic dispersal fields and phase inversion rounds. The Ebon Claw Bastion on the edge of Ghoul Stars has gone fully silent since its last transmission. Only a single black pauldron drifting in-system, etched with warning runes in an unknown tongue. The threat has evolved, and the Deathwatch with it. Even their deployment strategies have shifted. No longer limited to isolated kill teams, the Vigil has authorized strike cadres, multi-kill team deployments formed for sustained sectoral engagements. These are rare, reserved for galactic-level threats, but they have already seen use. During the subjugation of Kordax, 4 kill teams operated in unison across a fractured planet-wide Genestealer cult uprising. While Astra Militarum forces clashed in the streets above, the Deathwatch moved through the sewers, the power cores, the under-ministratums, cutting out the rot at its source. It was war without lines, without generals, and the Watch won it in silence. But even silence has a weight. The burden of the endless vigil grows heavier. Every day, more worlds call for aid, more stars vanish, more inquisitorial agents die without naming their killers. The Deathwatch is not expanding. It cannot. Its very structure forbids it. A blade too broad loses its edge, so they sharpen what remains. More Astartes than ever are being called to the Watch, from chapters that once never contributed. The Red Scorpions, the Auric Patricians, even the Mortifactors now send brothers. Some go willingly, some are ordered, but all take the same oath: to serve in black, to watch where others blink, to kill what should not exist. And still no one sees them. No one celebrates them. Not even when they save worlds. They move like shadows across the stars. Their ships bear no heraldry. Their names are redacted in every record, and when their mission ends, they vanish before the dust settles. But if you look closely, if you know where to look, you can see them. A scar on a xenos corpse no known weapon could make. A kill zone designed for creatures that don't yet officially exist. A black gauntlet print scorched into a collapsed hive spire. These are their signatures. This is their legacy. Because in the broken age of 42M, the Imperium has too many enemies to count, and the Deathwatch will meet them all, one by one, in shadow, in silence, as the Black Sentinels. There will come a day when the stars go out. Not in myth, not in prophecy, but in truth. The last light will blink, the last scream will echo unheard, and the last fortress will fall into ruin beneath skies choked with alien storms. Some say this is fate, others call it the long night. A few whisper that even the Emperor cannot halt the turning of the great galactic wheel. But if that day comes, when humanity's final candle gutters and the void leans in to devour the last breath of resistance, one thing is certain: the Deathwatch will still be fighting. This is the nature of the Vigil. Not merely a duty, not merely an oath, but a truth that burns in the marrow of every brother clad in black. The war against the Xenos never ends. It has no victory. It has no armistice. It is not fought for conquest or honor. It is fought so that someone else, somewhere far away, might live one more day in ignorance of what lurks in the shadows. They are not remembered because they cannot be. Records of their deeds are erased, their victories classified, the names of entire kill teams locked behind sigils only the High Lords may break. The Deathwatch is a weapon so sharp, so precise, it must remain unseen, even by those it protects. And still they fight. Across the breadth of the galaxy, their footprint is everywhere and nowhere. On a forge moon swallowed by living metal, a kill team detonates an experimental weapon that destabilizes Necron phase matter. On a jungle death world infested with synapse nodes, 3 Astartes fight alone against an evolving Tyranid strain that mimics Imperial voices. In the void between stars, watch ships patrol without destination, answering calls that have not yet been sent, responding to threats still hidden by the warp. They do this knowing they will not return. Because the Vigil is not about returning, it is about standing fast when no one else will. The stories of the Deathwatch, those that survive in coded whispers, speak of warriors who have endured horrors no other Marine has survived. A kill team walking for weeks through a Dyson graveyard filled with floating corpses that still whisper truths no human tongue should know. A black shield who slew a xenos, mimic of his own dead brother, to prevent the infection from spreading into Watch Fortress Harrow Deep. An entire fortress that broadcast its own coordinates to a passing orc fleet just to lure the war boss into a trap with a vortex detonation device beneath its core. Even in death, the Watch is hunting, because the Vigil does not die with the warrior, it passes on. A pauldron here, a purity seal affixed in silent reverence, a chain blade recovered from beneath 3 kilometers of collapsed spire. These become more than relics. They are memories made steel, and they are given to the next Watch Brother. There is no retirement, there is no end of service. Some few are returned to their chapters, yes. Marked by scars both visible and unseen, they rejoin their kin, changed, quieter, sharper. They stand apart at rituals, they watch doorways before entering. They sleep in armor, and their dreams are filled with alien eyes. And in time, even the chapter begins to forget them, because the Vigil never lets go. Others never return. They remain at the Watch fortresses, veterans beyond measure. These are the ancient sentinels, warriors who have served for centuries and now train the next generation. They are not teachers in the traditional sense. They do not speak often. But when they enter the training hall, even the most decorated Primaris intercessor falls silent. For these veterans bear the cold aura of experience, the knowledge of wars fought in places too dark to name. They are the old blades, dull only in polish, and when a threat rises beyond comprehension, they are the first into the void. Then there are the fortresses themselves. Each one is a tomb waiting to be sealed, not out of defeat, but as part of the Vigil. Should a threat ever grow too great, should containment fail, should the quarantine protocols rupture, the fortress will die on command. Each is rigged with multiple fail-safe systems, self-immolation charges, psychic null detonators, and scrap code demons that will rip the data vaults apart in under 2 seconds. Because nothing can be allowed to escape. There are tales of Watch fortresses already lost. Tethris, silence, which once floated in the halo stars, went dark mid-transmission. When a scout frigate arrived decades later, they found the station vacant, intact, and filled with armor, every suit empty. No sign of combat, no evidence of breach. Just one message carved into the central sanctum wall. They were not ready, so we left. To this day, no one knows what it means. Others are more violent. Echelon Varnis, located deep in Segmentum Pacificus, detonated itself during a warp breach event. Records indicate the kill teams within sacrificed themselves to prevent a psychic spill from infecting 3 nearby hive systems. The star it orbited has never reignited. It remains a black smear in the sky, like a scab over a wound the galaxy dares not reopen. Yet for every fortress that falls, another endures. Their signal beacons blink in the deep, patient, waiting. The Vigil is not reactive. It is predictive. It does not simply respond to threats. It studies, models, adapts. And when the enemy mutates, the Watch mutates faster. This is the Deathwatch's greatest weapon. Adaptation. Every kill team is forged from difference. Blood angels beside iron hands, white scars beside Karkarodins. Divergent doctrine, culture, even belief. But within the Vigil, they function as one. Not because they are taught uniformity, but because they are taught purpose. A kill team is not a squad. It is an answer, a living response to an impossible threat. And as the galaxy fractures further, as ancient enemies return and new terrors breach the walls of the known, the Watch does not flinch. It does not break. It does not scream into the night for help that will never come. It simply reloads and steps forward, Because this is the truth the Deathwatch has always known. The Vigil is not about hope. It is not about faith. It is not about winning. It is about being there, at the breach, at the end, at the last threshold before oblivion. When all others fall, when every banner is broken and the stars go out one by one, the Deathwatch will still be standing. Black armor, silver shoulder, bolter held steady, watching, waiting, and ready to kill. Because so long as even one of them remains, the Vigil is eternal.